And welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. On this podcast, we're going to continue talking about public goods. And remember, I said on a previous podcast that there are two characteristics for defining a public good. So let's look at those a little bit more in depth. And the first one we said is a public good is a good that is non-rivalrous in consumption. Non-rivalrous in consumption. So that means there's a zero, not zero is probably too strong of a word, but something approaching a zero marginal cost in consumption. And what I mean by that is that if one person, myself, if I increase consumption of a good, it will not to any significant degree diminish the amount of consumption available to some other person. So the example I used on a previous video was air, and if I start breathing more air, it doesn't really take away air from another person. But if I have a car, that means that another person doesn't have that car. So that's that would be the air is non-rivalrous in consumption. The car would be rivalrous in consumption. And then the second part of the definition of a public good, and I probably really have too much here, but I'll just kind of hit the highlights, is that the good is non-excludable. Okay, non-payers cannot be excluded. They cannot be excluded from getting the good once it is produced. Okay. So we're not asking whether or not consumers are currently being excluded. That's not what we're asking. The question is whether they could be excluded. Could we exclude non-payers? If the answer is no, once you produce the good, you can't prevent non-payers from enjoying the good. I gave the example in the previous video of TV stations, local TV stations, not cable, but local TV stations. Once they send their signal out into the airwaves, they cannot prevent the non-payers from enjoying the good. So these non-payers, who they just put their antenna up and watch the local news, they are what we call free riders. They're what we call free riders. A free rider is somebody who receives the benefits of the good without paying for it. Okay? And we're all going to try to be free riders, I guess, or most of us are going to try to be free riders if we can. We're going to try to enjoy stuff without having to pay for it. We'll try to do that, or most of us will. And this is a problem, okay? It's this right here, this free rider part. That is the problem. And why is free rider a problem? Because it's going to cause the good to be underproduced relative to the social optimum. Now, why would that be the case? Well, let's just look at it. Here's the problem. If a firm cannot exclude non-payers, okay, so they produce the good and they can't exclude non-payers, then the firm is not going to be able to earn a profit. Now I'm going to do an example of this on an upcoming video. Okay, then the firm can't earn a profit. They can't make money from producing the good, because when they make the good, people can consume it without paying for it. So how are we going to make any money? And as a result, the firm's just not going to produce the good, right? They're not going to do it. It's not worth doing it because they can't make any money, because they cannot exclude non-payers. And if that's the case, then it might be that the benefits of the good outweigh the costs, but the good does not get produced. And that's one of our definitions of inefficiency. It's one of our definitions of our market failure, is that the benefits outweigh the cost, but this public good never gets produced. And it never gets produced because the firm can't earn a profit, and they can't earn a profit because they can't exclude non-payers. They can't stop free riders from enjoying the good. They can't stop the free riders from enjoying the good without paying for it. So I'm going to do an example of this on another video. I'm going to do an example of this and explain this in a little bit more clarity with a specific example, with a specific good. All right. Again, this has been Mr. Hagan, another podcast. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next podcast.